legendary astronaut Buzz Aldrin, comedian Tom Papa, and Jim Norton as Grocery Man. The Opie and Anthony Show is live 5 days a week. They even have their own channel.
It's barely a show, and here it is a channel right now.
Go to SiriusXM.com to find out more and for a free trial. Let's get the show on the road. Buzz Aldrin, welcome back to the Opie and Anthony Show.
Oh,
Well, Ron Howard. No,
Right,
I'm no relationship. But I was named after him, sir. Because I looked like him when he was a little boy.
We're on to the show.
oh, there we go.
And we had Ron Howard.
Pull up a chair, sir.
And we discussed that. And it was a terrific day.
Yes, Ron Howard is the TV.
Yeah, we had him on the show.
This isn't the actor. This is the manager of Beverly Hills Hotel.
Oh, so that's a different guy.
Oh, really?
I was going to a debate at the Reagan Library.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend tried to buy a tie downstairs, $60. She said, I'm not going to pay $60 for a tie. So Ron says, here, take mine. Then I'm walking down the hallway, and I remember an open belt. He took his belt off.
Wow.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Well, that's what
It's
you
good to
get.
be Buzz Aldrin, isn't it?
You're an American hero, national hero.
I need a tie. Guy just hands you his tie.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you got a lot of crystals on or something.
He wanted it back. Oh, he did. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
did he?
What's all the crystals about? The bracelets. There's something going on there.
Evil spirits.
Yeah.
Opies.
Gotta keep those away. Buzz, pleasure to have you here, obviously.
Yes.
And you have Mission to Mars, my vision for space exploration.
Missions.
Missions.
We tried to put an S on it.
Oh, so they just went mission. But you're talking multiple missions.
This is ongoing.
Right.
Sustaining. They don't come back.
Oh,
Permanent.
really? Okay, all right.
Why don't they come back? Is it just the distance is too far, or what's the what
A
happened?
lot of reasons. We want to build up as rapidly as we can, a sustaining number, and if you get 60 people, that takes 3 years. Nobody's going to build a 100-person space station.
Right.
Get them there every 26 months.
Ferry them over there.
That's when the Earth goes around twice once.
A little closer, right.
Mm.
The timing has to be impeccable with the launch. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Do you build the habits?
Omega watches.
Yeah, the Omega watch. I remember those commercials. They were, hey, we're the watch of the astronaut.
Do you build the habitat? How do you build the habitat first? Is there a like a something that builds it first before they arrive, or how do they build where they're going to live?
Well, you need a short transmission time. Not even from the Earth to the moon. It's a second and a half, 3 seconds round trip to see what you whether it did what you told it to do. So we practice on the big island of Hawaii when somebody designs what the International Lunar Base should be about. So we practice and rehearse and so work out the kinks. Then we do it on the moon for the other international countries. We do it from a control base on the far side of the moon. It's a neutral gravity point, 50,000 miles away. So we put a control center there to do the robotics science and for the caterpillar digging crystals from the dark parts of the craters. But its big job is to learn how to learn to put these things together. And these are not small, they're big. And they got to travel over somewhat uncertain terrain.
Right.
And then dock with each other, hook up the electrical leads. Nobody knows how to really do that.
Right.
So that's why we got to practice to do it at the moon for the internationals and tourist type people.
Wow, yeah.
And then we do it from the moon of Mars onto the surface of Mars.
And what about one thing they say with astronauts that traveling 3 years in space or whatever it is illness, cancer, broken bones, like these little. Are they gonna have? Do they have a technology yet where they can kind of monitor you on a microscopic level? Is that what they're working on to kind of catch these things before they get started in astronauts?
Well, it's called an EKG. If you go to an auction, you can get meals.
Yeah.
Buy EKGs at an auction during landing on
Yeah, they're actually selling your EKGs from when you were touching down on the moon. Interesting.
I thought at first it was just normal. Nothing was different.
Yeah, but were you too little wound up?
But it's taken several years to put together this plan that really tightens things up with the whole space program. We look at space policy as it evolved since rockets first came out. Sputnik, Yuri Gagarin, and our reaction to that with Mercury catching up during the Gemini program and Apollo. Then we start running into things where things didn't quite go right. We made some bad mistakes that took away what we would love to have today.
Yeah.
And then Bush said the same as the accident board, retired the orbiter at the end of 2010. That's 7 years to come up with a substitute. It's still isn't there.
Right. That's it's a shame. It's I really it hurts to watch and see what's happening to the space
shuttle wasn't
program.
the original design at all.
It wasn't.
No, two-stage, fully reusable wings and wheels on the orbiter, wings and wheels on the booster. That's what we'd love to have now. But there are reasons why that didn't happen, and generally, like so many things, it's short-term objectives in politics. So this foundation is going to look at space policy, exploration, science, development, commercial, and security. Now, I put security first, but I'd be a warmonger if I did that. But it's also planetary defense from asteroids. And what is really needed now is a test bed at the station for long-term life support. Okay, NASA needs that in a bad way. The space station needs something to do. And this Inspiration Mars mission with the married couple leaving in January of 2018 for 500 days flyby of Mars, that's a great stimulation. There's some other political stimulations that need to be cultivated by people like you even before the end of Obama's term.
Yeah.
Because if he helps who he thinks is going to win, then who he thinks is going to win has a marvelous opportunity as approaching the 50th anniversary of the first through the last, centered around the re-election in 2020. Okay? So either Obama's successor makes a meaningful commitment within 2 decades for permanence on Mars, or if he doesn't, she doesn't, why the guy running against him or her says, well, no problem, because Obama didn't pay any attention to the 50th anniversary of Kennedy's speech, sending us to the moon. Why should anybody in that administration care about 50th anniversaries and commitments to the future? Can you imagine what Earth history is going to be like 200-300 years from now when it records a leader on Earth of an organization that made a commitment and saw it follow through for human beings from the Earth to make a 2-planet system for human beings by beginning permanence on another planet?
It'd be amazing.
Now that is going to go down in history. I had a religious guy standing next to me as I was explaining it. That guy's going to be in history greater than Alexander the Great, Columbus, Genghis Khan, Moses, Abraham, and Jesus Christ.
Oh,
he
didn't like that. I
No,
bet.
he probably liked a lot
sure
of them, but
about
not that last
I
one.
bet he didn't
Can,
like
can I
that.
ask you too? They say that I've always heard that they were going to colonize the one. What's it? Io is that Jupiter moon? But they said was a good candidate for it too.
That's got volcanoes all the time.
Oh, so is that not a good candidate?
That's not a good place.
But are there any of the Jupiter moons that are, or no? Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong one.
Yeah, I kind of lose track of the names, but there's one. One that has ice, and you can see the cracks in the ice.
Yeah.
And the ice may be 15, 20 miles deep. Ice on top of water, and at the bottom of the water, of course, may be the same tidal effects on the rocks of this moon that may cause the same vents around which all sorts of animals are found here on Earth with no sunlight, just salt water and the minerals coming up from the deep beds. So there are a number of people think that might house some life. Of course, they breathe water. And, they don't come to the surface, and they don't text or
that'd be a little.
Do you you've heard a lot of things talk about
life.
like astronauts that see these things when they're traveling, and I don't know whether to believe it or not. And there was a guy who came out recently. I don't remember his name. His name was, you'll know him, Ed. He was an astronaut. Ed Mitchell. And he said, Dr. Ed Mitchell, and he's saying that he saw extraterrestrial craft, or he said he saw something. And it's really hard to discount an astronaut. I mean, you can write off certain people.
This Mars missions, though, people always look back at the Kennedy speech about the moon. And it's one of the great points of this country and what we achieved over that amount of time. And it was time, and a lot of work went into that, obviously, Where is that passion these days with the American people, to the pride to see something like that happen again?
I don't know, but I think, people wrote the history, very classic history of that time period.
Sure.
And the timeliness of that commitment. And he drew a conclusion saying that the elements that were coming together at that time just could never repeat themselves.
Right.
And he didn't think there'd be any way. But if we submit things to the president, like we did, and it's called a flexible path, which means you're ready to do a lot of things with no destination and no time period.
Mm-hmm.
But then somebody in the administration, whether they were looking at my submission or not, which had tests of the interplanetary spacecraft, initial ones, were a 1 year to fly by a comet. So what? It's a test of the spacecraft. But as you fly by the comet, you crash the upper stage into the comet. So everybody back here on Earth with their binoculars looking at the tail of the comet sees it go boom.
Right.
And you take pictures of it as you go on by. That's the kind of public interest in what we're doing. And this married couple flying by Mars will increase tremendously. I have to convince people that are sure that we should go back to the moon this time to stay.
Right,
It's a wonderful statement. But what it costs us to do that, we can lead, bringing the nations together, and deciding where the base is going to be, then build the base with a key element, an early control center hab module for the interplanetary craft, testing the temperatures, very hot, very cold, and the radiation that's on the moon.
I think it's a problem in that finance is looked at so much, the cost of all these things. But the technology and innovation for the people that comes out of the space program and these very grand ideas always pays off. It always winds up being better for people here on Earth.
Well, unexpected things come along.
Yeah.
We learn, as I pioneered, that training for spacewalking is best done underwater in a spacesuit with neutral buoyancy.
Was that your idea?
No, not my idea, but I welcomed it because I've been a scuba diver for almost 10 years.
Oh,
Before that.
Now, why a married couple too? Is that because literally do they have any experience with the sex or the possible procreation in space? Is that something to do with it, or just so people could? Why a married couple?
I'm not sure that there's enough room in that. Well, there's a very likely candidate of two people that I know quite well, because brought him into our diving group called the Sea Space Symposium. It's a couple that were 2 years in Biosphere 2. They couldn't stand each other, so they got married. But they head up a company now that is building long-term life support systems for the government Orion spacecraft, which I don't know whether it'll ever replace the shuttle. Now, back in '09, we were looking at this gap if we don't fill it between a replacement for the shuttle and when the commercial guys will be able to take things to the space station. We're going to have a gap, and we've had one.
Yeah.
From the government. We flew twice past the 2010 deadline. But what I proposed in '09 was, with 2010 coming up pretty soon, I said, no, let's fly the shuttle once a year. And we can get enough things done. Now, in between, 30 months before and after for that particular orbiter, and you got 6 months in between to be working on the next program, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't buy that, but look at who predicted we were going to have a problem and had a ready-made solution.
Yeah, and now we're at the mercy of the Russians, I gather.
Well, we're financing their space program.
Exactly.
I want to plug the book.
It's
today,
amazing.
I'm sorry. It's called. It is called. I'm going to get it absolutely right. It's called Mission to Mars: My Vision for Space Exploration. This book explains. You got some great people on the back. It's always hard to get people on the back to promote this, but colonizing space is essential for the long-term survival of the human race. And this book shows us how Stephen Hawking. So you have some really legit people on the back.
He said we got 200 years to establish an off-planet habitation for the survival of people here in case of an asteroid impact, nuclear war, pestilence. There must be some other real tragedy.
Yeah, there's some other bad stuff.
It is a great way to kind of not have all your eggs in one basket, and if we do have the technology and the minds behind it, let's see why we wouldn't do.
Just think, the human race originated on Earth, either in the Garden of Eden or falling down from the trees, and we've been here for how long? And now we will be a 2-planet system with growing again with the challenge of trying to make that place terraforming, they call it. It's pretty long term and rather impressive things you got to do to sort of reverse nature a little bit.
Sort of a shake and bake planet.
Yeah, but Al Gore thinks we've been reversing nature.
Right. Yeah, here on Earth.
What would you use for energy when you're there? Where would the main source of energy come from?
I don't know whether we can find plutonium or uranium there. Nuclear, solar dynamic, where you take and focus the sun's rays on a focal point and then circulate a fluid through there and compare that temperature with the temperature on the back that's not seeing the sun, that radiates outward to the blackness of space. Temperature difference is a way of generating electricity. You put electricity into an air conditioner and you circulate a fluid around and you get cold. You take away heat. Well, you can. I'm exceeding my knowledge of hydrodynamics and thermodynamics, but there's no doubt that works. They compare the surface water with the cold water in Hawaii and generate electricity. The surface temperature and geotech is the temperature down where it gets quite hot, whether it's lava or not.
And that's stored energy for that can be used.
Yeah, but it's, I believe, more efficient than photovoltaic, which is what China is beating the pants out of us and making it.
That's supposedly not very efficient.
No, it's
generating
really hard,
electricity,
and
yeah.
it takes large amounts
Right.
of area
Yeah.
and construction in outer space
Mhm.
to be able to beam that energy back to Earth.
Yeah.
What kind of psychological testing too? Like, there's got to be some intense stuff these guys have to go through for that type
Yeah,
of.
they were telling me that we got to rush out of here when I'm through to get to CNN. So let's not dilly dally along if we're doing that.
You got CNN to do, huh?
Yeah, well,
busy guy.
Because I was reading, so I'm reading something about. I mean, I hate to dilly dally, but I'm reading something about how the psychological testing for the astronauts for this type of long term travel is very, very tricky, because you don't know how somebody's going to respond after being away from the Earth for, say, a month or 2 months or a year.
Well, they've got tests in Europe, and the number of people, candidates for astronauts, have been up there for 500 days. It's called Project 500. And we put these people in the biosphere. I think a part of it is to make sure that you put a big time lag in any communication with who's running the show. But what the hell, we get used to that now with our iPhones. We text somebody, we don't get an answer right away. It comes
That's
in later.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we send a questionable photo. Now, do you think that we're better off with space travel with the government handling it, or is privatizing it? Do you think a better way to go, because things tend to get done a little bit faster?
Yeah, well, they certainly do, and they're historical examples. But I think in general, you can compete at the design level. We can't always do that with the government. You take what you buy, and you compete at the design level, and then you make a selection, and then you cooperate with other people at the operational level. In fact, you can do a little better with the private sector, and
That's a good compromise.
and
Yeah.
you make an investment and you get a return. The government doesn't get any return at all, so the motivation isn't quite there, especially if it's a cost plus contract. That means you bid on it, whatever it costs you to make it, you get reimbursed plus. See, if you run way over, you get reimbursed for all that.
How important was the Cold War and the motivation for the lunar program, as opposed to us needing some kind of motivation for this?
God, you're asking all the good questions, and we're not recording.
I know, right? What? Check 1, 2.
Yeah, I told you to ask that.
All right. Let me not answer that, but use that as springboard.
Okay.
I believe that the English-speaking nations did a lot to save the world from tyranny in World War I, and certainly World War II.
Sure.
The Cold War, English-speaking nations stood up against the expansion of communism in many different places. If anybody stems the spread of radicalism, it can be the English-speaking nations.
Certainly.
Okay, now, Russia and China, they get along pretty well. They got different language, they got different symbols, and they get together to do what? To thwart the U.S. in what it's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So why shouldn't the English-speaking nations be a little bit more cohesive?
Right.
The technical language a while back used to be German. Not anymore, it's English. The diplomatic language certainly used to be French. Not anymore, it's English. We can get together most of them, but the really crucial is India in Asia. And I think if we can cultivate the cooperation with Japan and India, and the U.S. involved in that, Japan wants to really sort of concentrate on